Welcome. This unit is on solving proportions. This is Chapter 5, Section 4. In this section, we will learn to solve proportions. We have already worked quite a bit on this in class when we do our 4Rs. And so this should be relatively easy for you as compared to the other sections. You have one vocabulary word. The vocabulary word is cross product, and that is the products obtained by multiplying the denominator of each ratio by the numerator of the other ratio in the proportion. Let's look at an example. Cross products in proportions are equal. If the ratios are not in proportion, the cross products are not equal. So this is a proportion. These two fractions are proportionate, 6/8 and 9/12. Because they are proportions, we know that 6 times 12 is going to be equal to 8 times 9. Of course, 6 times 12 is 72, and 8 times 9 is also 72. If the ratios were not in proportion, the cross products would not be equal. For example, 1 times 7 is 7, and 6 times 2 is 12. So we know that these two ratios are not in proportion. Now, that's not the only way of solving or determining whether they're in proportion or not. You can also find a common denominator. So there's two methods to doing this. To find a common denominator, you determine what is the lowest common multiple of both of your denominators, 8 and 12. In this case, it's 96. And you say 8 goes into 96 when you multiply by what? When you multiply by 12. So you multiply the numerator by 12 as well, and the equivalent fraction here is 72. 12 goes into 96 how many times? Well, when you multiply by 8. 9 times 8 is 72. Because this fraction or ratio is equal to this ratio, the original ratios are in proportion. So the two methods, one is to use cross products and the other is to find a common denominator and see if the fractions are equivalent. Let's look at example 1. Tell whether these ratios are proportional. We're going to say 15 times 4, well 15 times 4 is 60, and 6 times 10, 6 times 10 is 60. We use cross products to find that. And since 60 does equal 60, we know that the cross products are equal. Thus, the ratios are proportionate. Let's go on to the next example. In this case, we're dealing with fuel. And the fuel should be 4 parts gasoline to 1 part oil. So our ratio is 4 parts to 1 part. If we combine 15 quarts oil with 15 quarts of gasoline, will the mixture be correct? Is the proportion correct? Well, again, we're going to find the cross products after we set up the ratios. Notice here we set up the ratios. 4 parts to 1 part. Is that equal to 15 parts to 5 parts? Let's find out. 1 times 15 is 15. And is that equal to 4 times 5. 4 times 5 is 20. The ratios are not equal, so the mixture will not be correct. Because 15 is not equal to 20, so the ratios of 4 to 1 and 15 to 5 are not equivalent and not proportional. Let's take a look at example 2. In this example, we're solving the proportions. And we could easily use cross products to do that. 1 times 48, x times 3, divide both sides by 3. Or I showed you the shortcut already, 1 times 48, and divide by the number left out. But we can also solve this by looking at unit rates. This is x over 1 item, so this is already a unit rate. To make the right-hand side a unit rate, we need to get the denominator to equal 1. Well, to get 3 to equal 1, we need to divide by 3. And to keep an equivalent fraction, whatever we do in the numerator, we need to do in the denominator. So let's divide 48 by 3 and get 16, and then 3 divided by 3 is 1. So we have x over 1 item equals 16 over 1. And we know that the numerators are equal because the denominators are equal. So in that case, x is going to equal 16. And if you'd used cross products, you would have gotten the same answer. Let's look at example 3. Solve this proportion. We're going to use a common denominator. We have 21 and 3. Well, what we need to do is simply multiply the side, the numerator and denominator, by 7. When we multiply it by 7, the denominator, 3 times 7, will be 21. And they will have a common denominator. And so we multiply to write the fractions with the lowest common denominator. Y times 1 is 1y. 21 times 1 is 21. This side, as we talked about, becomes 7 over 21. And once again, we know that the numerators are equal because the denominators are equal. So we're just going to look at this part. And as you can see, 1y equals 7. Well, 1y equals 7. We'll divide both sides by 1. So y is going to equal 7. Now, this could have been easily solved with cross products as well. And even though this isn't in your notebook, I want you to take a look at this. We could have simply done 21 times 1 is 21 is equal to 1y times 3. Well, 3 times 1y is 3y. Since we have 3y equals 21, we're going to divide both sides by 3. So divide this by 3 and this by 3. So we're going to have 21 divided by 3 is 7 equals y. And notice we have the same solution. Two different methods to find the same solution. And you need to pick which one is more suitable. In example 4, we have a department store that is selling 3 pairs of children's socks for $5. Miss Wagner wants to buy a dozen pair of socks. How much will this cost? First thing we need to do is set the proportion. We have 3 pairs for $5. So here's our proportion. 3 pairs for $5. She wants to buy a dozen pairs. That's our 12 pairs right here. How much will this cost? This is our unknown. I'm going to use cross products to solve this, which is going to be different than what it shows in your notebook. We have 5 times 12. Well, 5 times 12 is 60 equals 3 times d, which is 3 times d, which is 3d. Now I'm going to divide both sides by 3. Divide by 3, divide by 3. So 20 equals d, and that's my solution. So it will cost $20 to buy 12 pairs of socks. Now your notebook shows a different way of solving this. And if you'd like me to show you that method tomorrow, I'd be more than happy to. Now let's take a look at example 5. We have Allison, who weighs 55 pounds and sits 4 feet away. Marco sits 5 feet away, and we want to know how much does Marco weigh. So our first step is to set up the proportion. Okay. Well, our mass is weight, so that's 55 pounds, over length 2. Our length 2 in this case is 5 feet, because that's Marco's length. Because the 55 is connected to the 4 feet away. Mass 1, length 1 is 4 feet, and mass 2 is our unknown. We're going to let that represent Marco's weight. Let's find the cross product. 55 times 4 is 220 equals 5 times x is 5x. Solve by dividing both sides by 5. In that case, 44 equals x. So Marco weighs 44 pounds. Many times in class we've talked about this, and I says multiply the two numbers and divide by the one left out. Multiply the two numbers on the diagonal and divide by the one left out. Notice that's just a shortcut to what we're doing here if we follow all the steps. You have 2 try this problems.